I believe it was. I don't know if it was yesterday or Saturday, but I know within the last couple of days it was the 30-year anniversary of the first Riddick Bowe Holyfield fight, which is one of my favorite fights. But I wasn't born for that. I wasn't even alive when that fight happened. You were, so I wanted to ask you, Rick, being a guy that was in the industry, in the boxing industry back then as well. What exactly like was the significance of that fight, and what did it mean at the time?
Well, Holyfield was the heavyweight champ of the world. What's his name was the number one contender in all the organizations, and they went to war, and it was a sensational fight. The best of the three of them. The last one was anticlimactic, but that first one, that was a war, and it was 12 rounds of warfare. They took some heavy leather in that fight. And, it's both of them left a lot of themselves in the ring that night. And it was warfare. I mean, what else can you say? It was 12 rounds of Hagler Hearns. How's that?
Yeah.
Instead of 3 rounds, it was 12 rounds of Hagler Hearns. I mean, just throwing bombs at each other. Yeah, at heavyweight, and just sensational. It really was. I mean, the crowd was going crazy, and you could just, the excitement was just so there for the fight, leading up to the fight, because you knew it was going to be a great fight because of their styles, and then both guys lived up to the hype of their styles and their prowess in the ring, and it just turned out to be one of the great heavyweight fights, at least of the modern era. Yeah. The last 50 years, I would say it ranks up there with the Ali Frazier fights. I would think I think Burt Cooper, Michael Moore, Burt Cooper didn't have as much meaning, but it was an unbelievable action fight. George Foreman Lyle, the only reason why I'm not counting that fight in that category, because it wasn't a world title fight. George had lost his title at that time. I would just say that those are some of the great heavyweight fights. Larry Holmes, Ernie Shaver.
Yep.
Okay. I'm sorry. Yes, Ernie Shaver, but Larry Holmes versus Ken Norton. That was sensational. Both guys knowing that they had to win the 15th round to win it, and they were 15 rounders back then. That was a sensational fight. You could name the great heavyweight fights really. There's probably 12 of them.
Joe Louis, Max Schmeling.
Yeah, Joe Louis, Max Schmeling, Joe Louis, Billy Conn. There's not that many of them. It's funny because Sonny Liston was never in a great fight. Think about that. He either steamrolled a guy or he got beat.
Well, he got steamrolled, yeah.
Right. He was never in a great fight. Think about that.
That is crazy.
He was never in a great fight. Nope. No. So great fighter. Okay, heartless. He was a gutless guy, but in the meantime, he was never in he was a great fighter, never in a great fight. That maybe sound weird, but it is the truth.
I mean, no, I mean it's not weird. There's fighters like that.
Yeah. Normally at that level, there's not. Normally when you're in that many big fights, you have some really good fights, and he just never was one of those type of guys.
Yeah. Well, I know what Holyfield going into that Bowe fight, the narratives were that basically like he really wasn't getting the respect he deserved as a champion going into the fight, even though he had being unmotivated Buster Douglas and things like that. But it seemed like he got more respect in a loss to Bowe. Would you say that's true at the time? Like, do you feel
absolutely. The way he stood up, and they were just winging hooks and straight right hands at each other, and I mean, people forgot about the jab in the fight. Like who was jabbing? What? He throwing jabs? What did he throwing a jab? I mean, it was like they were just standing in front of each other, just heaving leather at each other. It was one of those rare fights where the brutality was so high, but they just kept fighting. I mean, they just kept fighting. Um, I watched it with a friend of mine at that time. He's no longer with us; he passed away. But he had a great line about that fight. Okay, because he said, Rick, he said, I didn't know fights were this great. I got to watch every week from now on. He said, you get this fight about once in a lifetime. Shut the fuck up. That's what I told him. So, they actually think that this happens all the time. You know
No,
what I mean?
no.
Right? They just don't realize. Like somebody said to me about Gaddy Ward, oh my God, I got to watch boxing more often. Yeah, okay.
I'm like, you got to sit through about 300 stinkers to get to one of these.
Yeah, I agree, and it's you're just so happy to be. I started in boxing January 1st of '91,
Mhm.
and that fight came along in '92. And you're just so proud to go to the local Italian restaurant, go to the local bagel shop. The old timers are sitting around. They know you're in boxing. You walk in, you're prouder than a peacock because the fight was great. They're all enthused. But then you get situations where you want to hide, like the Tyson biting the ears,
Yeah,
some of the embarrassing shit, the bad decisions. The referee stopped the fight way too fast at certain fights, and then you want to hide, but that's a kind of fight you can be proud to say, I'm in the professional boxing business and I'm proud of it.
yeah. I kind of got that same feeling. I mean, what Bowe, this wasn't as big as Bowe versus Holyfield one, but like just a couple years ago when the first Fury Wilder fight, I thought was, even though it ended in like a bad decision or whatever, I thought it was a great fight. I feel like boxing won that night. I feel like it was one of the